Thank you for acknowledging that because I'm coming from Southern California and Sheena's coming from the Philippines. So she's
Hello
staying
from the
up late
future.
to talk to us. And I so appreciate that because Sheena's also a mom of little ones. And so sleep is precious.
Thank you very much, LJ. And good morning from the future. Your
Yes,
future. Yeah.
exactly. Oh, and you know what? That's so, I'm just going to say, I feel accurate because one of the, reasons I love you in my life and talking to you and being connected to you is because I feel like you are someone who is connected to kind of a future version of us humans and a very spiritual approach. And I just, yeah, I feel like you are, if I can, not to judge you, but I just love that you seem just very strong in your sense of your spirituality. And yeah, that you just are bringing something from the future that I want, even if it's your present. So
Oh,
thank you
thank
so much for that. And just in all the ways that you do that, as I know you're a practitioner in many ways, and an artist, and a teacher, and a speaker, right? And so many talents. So I so appreciate your presence. Yeah. And so how does that strike you? Even just that idea of
you.
bringing
But
a
like,
future vision.
thank you so much also, LJ, for providing this, how do you say, platform or safe space to have these kinds of interesting conversations that, we don't even know how it's gonna start or how it's gonna play out, but it always plays out anyway. Um, I think it's really interesting how you say that, that you see me as as a, like, a person to see as like a vision of what the future will be, because I actually look at you and I say that, that when I look at LJ, it's like, that's the kind of mom I want to be, that's the kind of person that, I want to
Mm.
embody. So I think, it's always it's always mutual. The energy always resonates and flows in the same way or in different ways, but they all come from the same energy nonetheless.
Mm. Mm. There's that spiritual understanding that you bring through. Yeah, but just like I feel like you bring this like peace that feels very real because it seems like you just have an understanding of things that it's like working for you. If I could speak from the outside. And I know, and I feel like your sister, Christine or Kish, right? That it really
Yeah.
brings that as well. Do you feel like that's something that you both that you got from your family, or do you just both happen to be that strongly rooted in your spirituality? Or
That's a very interesting question. But
yeah,
I mean, um, how do you say? I guess it kind of really developed over time, and having had a relationship like her and me, and you, of
yeah,
course, Hildy. She was also like, one
yes,
of the strongest influences to us, like an
yes.
elder sister, looking up at her and seeing like how we could design our lives in the ways that
Oh,
we really wanted to, and um to create it in a way that really brought us genuine joy and excitement. And it kind of like it just needs to have that seed planted, and then it grows roots, and
oh,
it grows the plant or the seedling, and then into a tree that keeps on growing and giving. And
oh my God.
yeah, I think that's how it's been. And I guess because we play a lot together, like me and my sister, we like to
Yeah.
throw all around these ideas a lot. So that's why we've gone
Oh,
in the same direction. Not exactly like in the same manner, but like in the same understanding of things, in the same flow of things, and the same
mm.
appreciation of things.
Yeah. I love too that you each are your own bringing your own leadership and your own and you're both like thought leaders, but I think that's so beautiful to bring up though, the importance of like people around us who are like we're in like mastermind with, right? So like you
Yeah.
and your sister and Hildy having been having this like mastermind effect going on, right? Meaning this understanding of when two or more minds come together, right? That we're even more connected,
Correct.
and that it's like a believing mirror, like someone who you can like see yourself in and sees that possibility in you and really builds that belief. And I think that's so interesting how that relates to facing fear
Oh,
already, right? Like how important
hmm,
those aspects are.
absolutely. And um and you know that, Hildy Kish and I, Hildy Christine and I have been, my sister, I've known my sister since I was born, but I've known Hildy since maybe I was like 3 or 4 years old. So
Mm.
it's also been it's been literally a lifetime also for
Yes,
me.
a lifetime
So
mastermind of sisterhood.
exactly. And sometimes,
Mm.
you don't really realize it was already a mastermind, but it's only when you look back that you say, oh, that was the start of it, or that's where that had actually begun.
Mm.
And yeah, and I think like a lot of the fears that I had, or like a lot of the fears that I knew that I could overcome, was possible because of having a mastermind or having a group of people
Yes.
who you share this common belief system or trust or faith with.
Wow. I think that's so revolutionary. And this is like so hasn't come up at all yet. The importance of like facing fear of like the people we have around us and how much that can help change our relationship with ourselves and our approach to life, right? And be just another way to be facing something like fear differently, just like stronger. And ooh, yeah. And so now like I feel like I want to like fast forward to like your current awareness. Oh
Ah,
man, this little dog loves to come in. Okay, I'm gonna close the door.
we have
Hmm.
a little guest.
Yep, right. Okay, Luna, you're in with me now. Okay, she wanted to be here for us and for this. So let me prop it back in my stand here. Okay. Okay. So, yeah, what, when you're now, like, it could be asked about, what do you think, like, fear? And this is, I know, kind of a big question. So, just whatever, like, comes through for you at this time. But yeah, what are your current thoughts if you were to be asked, like, what do you think about this thing called fear in our lives and how we're supposed to be working with it and understanding it
Mhm.
and interpreting it? And is it bad or good or right or
Oh,
wrong? And yeah, and so the yeah, those kinds of questions. How do you currently feel like
I,
you're feeling?
I think that's a very important question to ask, because like over the last like 2 3 weeks, it's been, I think that those kind of experiences have come forward towards me. I mean, not not some of those, not exactly like not exactly um expected. Like, it's like, it is like fear also coming from fear of certain things. Okay, let me just kind of
Yeah,
clarify a bit. It's like
yeah.
fear of the unknown, um,
Hmm.
fear of the future, um, fear of being misunderstood, fear of messing up, fear of um, not doing the right thing. So I mean, a lot of these things that that are absolutely also still in our control, or even fear of the things that we cannot control. And I think like for a person, like even for me, like a mom, like even in the everyday of like, okay, the fear of your children getting hurt, or
Yeah,
them not growing up well, or things like that. So fear is a thing that is um part of life, in the sense that I think right now that when you fear of something, or if there's some fear around some topic, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's bad. It means that, to me, that on one hand, it means that you care so much about it. That's why you have these emotions about it, because fear is
Mm,
merely an emotion. It means that
mm,
because it's an emotion, and we know about the emotional scale, it means that you can rise up from where it is on that particular topic and bring it to a higher level. So it doesn't necessarily mean that, fear equals death, fear equals, game over. So, but I think, um, having tools and our practices and community, even, or like people to talk with, that helps us to transmute that fear and use that fear into confidence, or use that fear into, faith. Even, I mean, I think a faith is a huge part of it. Use Transform the fear into faith, and
ooh,
then
yes.
use it into something that is meaningful, use it into something that's helpful, use it into something that's transformative even to you. I mean, without getting into details, there was this, um one thing that had happened to me like maybe 2 weeks back that was absolutely debilitating me. I was traveling overseas, and I had this concern, with some topic related to work.
Yeah.
And I had been racking my head over it, and so, the usual things about fear is that, you either like, delay it, or you don't want to face it, you don't want to talk about it, you don't know how to address it. But it's actually mostly because you don't know what the outcome will be, whether or not, your answer, uh, whatever your answer will be, what would be responded back to you. So it's like, it was painful. It was painful to the body, it was painful to the spirit, it was painful to the mind, because you know I just didn't know. And then, there came a point where, not as if, I was being pushed into a corner, but I felt like, I really need to, respond to this, I really need to attend to this, I need to give it my undivided attention. And then I kind of like, calmed down
Mm,
myself and told myself that, we don't know like what circumstance this other person is coming from. And I just gave that a lot of love. I mean, not in a very simplistic way of saying, I gave it a lot of love, but like genuinely thought about it and said like, people may be going through a different circumstance. People may be having challenges right now. So, um, it's okay for me to be understanding in this way, to just think that, okay, let me be understanding, let me try to see the perspective of this concern from their side. So
mm,
I guess it's all this also that, you've talked about kindness and compassion a lot, LJ. Many conversations that we've had over this last day,
mm,
and kindness and compassion saying that, okay, I'll understand you from where you're coming
mm,
from. Okay. And just ease that body, ease that mind,
mm.
ease that spirit, and like send it love, send it understanding, and hoping that you would be understand too. And then I gave my response towards that concern, and I was surprised because the response that I got to my response was that the person had accepted everything I had said. I was like, and in the first place, my first, uh, anticipation was this person won't accept what I'm gonna say. I was already,
Mm.
um, um, getting ahead of myself by saying that. But let how do you say, let my guard down and said, I was just really real to this person. I said that, this is where I am, this is my circumstance, and this is what I can do, or this is how I can help. And the person just said, okay, yes, please. We really appreciate, the response that you're responding back to me. And I was like, I didn't expect for the acceptance to be that big. The acceptance felt like a
Mm,
big thing. That, by being vulnerable and allowing my fear to transform into faith,
mm.
and here I am in this situation where, I'm being embraced back with open arms.
Oh
And
my gosh, yeah.
that was powerful for me.
Yes, and I feel like what's so beautiful is you could also be talking about like how, because just this idea of facing a fear versus not, right? Because you and how you talked about doing this with a fear with another person, but how it feels like the same, like how we can do that with ourselves, be more facing our fears and kind of treating ourselves like that friend, and like the feelings of acceptance we could get through actually facing these fears that we do have, right? And in mind, body, spirit way, like you said. And it just, yeah. And then I love that you keep bringing up that, even acknowledging that it is an energy and an emotion, that's not about extinguishing it, that
Yeah.
it is about doing something with that energy, so this transmuting it. And that the power of like even like things like community, or just expressing the fear, facing it, in a situation or with a person or within ourselves, right? And how that is part of what's going to help transmute it. And then that through faith, I love that you're helping us see that that is what we're transmuting it to, instead of just like getting rid of it, because it is an
Yeah.
energy, right? So it's like, it's interesting to consider transmuting it instead of getting rid of it, or
Correct.
repressing it or denying it, or, so part of facing it is with this idea that we can transmute it, right? And even most ideally into faith. And what's going to help us do that? Wow.
And kind of, I don't know if you'd agree with me that, sometimes, I mean, or I guess because, our practice has transformed over this last few years, that
Mhm.
kind of pushing it down or pushing it away feels painful nowadays. I mean, when you acknowledge, when you have come to a realization that, you know you have this power within you, denying yourself that power by trying to say that, I do not have this power, feels painful already. So
Mm.
having that awareness and knowing that, um I could be a better person, not the better person, I could be a better person, and, see this in a more harmonious way, see this in a more aligned and balanced way, and, appreciate for what it is, appreciate it as well for the lesson that I also might need to learn. I think
Mm.
that was very freeing for me, because um prior to that, I had not just on that particular concern or topic, but like on several topics around it, and, having faced that, I did cry it out at first, that is
Mhm.
a release, but you have to transmute it,
Mhm.
you let it
That's
out.
part of transmutation, right? Is like
Yeah.
expressing it in tears. I think I'm such a fan of tears.
And just letting it out, or speaking it out, or speaking it
Mhm.
into a safe space
Mm.
that,
Mhm.
that will just allow you that release, so that you can have that. You know how it is that when we talk about things about spirituality, sometimes it's just, all these ethereal things, but, to ground it down, it's like, you have to also kind of make it real for you as a person, that, that it's not just about the spiritual and, all the positives, but rather also like, but yes, I am a person, this is what's happening to me, this is my reality, and such.
Yes, right. Which is, I think what you're talking about is kind of not doing like the spiritual bypassing, right? Which became a thing where you're just trying to
Focus on
transcend
here.
it,
Yeah,
but that
correct.
you're being in it in a human way, but also knowing you have the power to transmute it. And then I think what you see, I think what you're also bringing up is maybe how our practices and such, and the people around us, and just can be helping us, yeah, be in this awareness. And then it's about having this mindset that we can transmute it, and we're gonna aim to flip it in a sense, right, towards, and face it basically, and love ourselves through it and
Yeah.
express it, right? And but with this knowing that we can transmute it, and that, yeah, it's so interesting I hadn't thought of that before, how it is this like energy of its own. And so for us to try to not face it or pretend it isn't there is that setting up a whole nother battle, right?
Correct, correct,
Oh,
correct.
yeah, right. So I feel like I need to like bring into my practices more like daily, like just looking at in my journaling, even just like starting to look more at like what am I afraid of with these various things, and just to be looking at it more in that like idea of transmuting it, right? And like you and I both know, like our we love Abraham Hicks and teachers who remind us how much it's all energy and vibration, right? And like you mentioned, the emotional scale idea. So when we
Yeah.
approach it that way, right, that we could go at our fears from a high vibe way too, right? Like
Yeah.
even like when we're at bar feeling good would be kind of an interesting time to even like play with that, right?
Correct.
um, super interesting. Wow.
I don't know if you've ever thought about it, but like how do you say, they say also that when you acknowledge something or when you speak of something, like especially in terms of fear, when you face it by talking about it, by facing it, it also takes the power of the fear away.
Mm,
I don't know if that makes sense to you, but it's like it helps you, like if you've had this release. Okay, so
yes.
now we're done with fear. Okay, all right,
Ah,
fine. We know we're in fear, so what's next? Something like that.
yes. And that is, I think that's actually really important for me to hear, because sometimes being in this awareness of vibration and the power of my words, I might be afraid to speak it because I'm worried it's going to give it more power. I think I've definitely been operating in that, even not even realizing it. Like it's like I'm afraid to give it power by acknowledging it. And so, let's just pretend it
Yeah.
isn't there, right? And it's like, well, how's that working for you? Right.
Well,
And even interesting how that feels in the body, right? Like, and with so many of us, I think dealing with like anxiety, for instance, which is totally like an energy and a feeling that I can feel like I can experience just because I have a
mhm,
lot of energy. And depending on how I manage it, it can definitely feel like anxiety, right?
correct.
And so to consider like our relationship with our fears and whether or not we're looking at them, and then how that plays a role with how we're feeling in our bodies, and how that can feel like anxiety, right? Just like this generalized anxiety where we're just like, I don't even know why, right? But I can see these could be some of the reasons, right? Because we're
Yeah.
not facing our fears, much less giving ourselves a chance to transmute them. A lot of us, me included.
No,
Mm,
let me tell you something interesting. So I told you that the last 3 weeks have been, crazy. So let me tell you what happened in the last 2 days. Let's make it
okay.
something more um recent. So
Mm,
a big typhoon just hit our country.
okay.
As
Yes.
literally did a whole country tour of the Philippines over the last two
Oh,
weeks.
speaking of facing fear, right? Geez, like
Yeah,
this is very
yeah.
real. And like, how do you
So
face a
we're
typhoon, right?
talking about the nature aspect, and then
Yes.
let
It's
me
a
add into
great
the
example.
equation. Let me add into the equation the fact that, like, because I'm in the travel industry as well. I mean, one of the other many talents or
Yes.
hats I have is being in the
Right.
travel industry. So we're currently operating 7 groups
Yeah.
running in the middle of this typhoon.
Oh my
So
gosh.
so I mean, one so yesterday, because of this, when the typhoon fell yesterday, we had about 5 of them get stranded.
Oh
Five of
my
the groups
gosh.
comprising about 300 people. So that in itself could be, I mean, if you think about that in itself, can be like a very big thing to face. Number one is like towards your client, towards the clients of the client, because it's a group, and then you have your suppliers, then you have, and then your circumstance. It could go so many different ways, but
Yes.
like for some reason, like this last week has been so empowering, or so filled with, I guess, so much of the things that we've put in our vortex, like so much of the things that we have put in from before, that knowing
Ah,
that, that yes, we are capable, yes, we have the power, yes, we have understanding, and it just felt like the most natural thing to navigate through it. Though sincerely and honestly, it could have been a different story in terms of, like, the feeling in the body and the mind and the spirit. But I keep thinking about it, and and I tell myself, because it's not only me, there's also my team. I have a team of about 10 people who are with me, who are on the ground together with them. And it's like, it's a big thing. But when you realize that you're in this position of power, in the sense of yourself, and
yes.
in the sense of your acknowledging your place in this time or wherever you are,
Yes.
it's like, no, but know that, no, like I was telling myself mentally, know that the solutions are there, know that the answers exist, know that um whatever help you need, the help will be given to you. That was
Mm.
like where my thought process was at. And I just acknowledged it, and I was just like running on that mode, and then now like slowing down into today, because out of the five, out of those groups, about four of that, thank you very much, cheers, I have a
Cheers.
delicious what do you call
Whole
it,
garden. with
whole
peach.
garden with the peach.
Is it
Um,
like a type of beer? It looks good.
Cheers.
Mm,
Okay,
mm.
that's fine. Get back.
There you go. Back to
Mm.
you. No, so yeah, having that acknowledgement and knowing that I was supported not only by my team, but that my parents, since we're in a family business, it was like also the supportive family, quote my bosses.
Yeah.
Um, it was just so empowering when you acknowledge, and when you know that you're in the right place and in the right space, and you know
Oh
that you
my
can.
gosh. I love that you brought up this story because it also reminds us that, yeah, part of being human is scary shit's going to happen, like typhoons, right? And I've been thinking about this idea of like peak performance, right? Which we've really just heard about in like sports, I feel like, or in
Correct.
physicality. But I've been thinking about, just how like our things like our self care and our spirituality can help us be in a level of more like peak performance, just mentally, physically,
Correct.
emotionally, energetically, right? And this is really what we're talking about. So that when the shit hits the fan and you're facing a typhoon and you're responsible for all these people and you have all these people working under you, that you can come about it with grace,
Correct.
right? Because you've been, taking care of yourself and you're in that mindset. You're like strong in your mindset and your faith, even right? And just so that you can face fearful things that are going to happen and just being human, right? So that we just are stronger and we can be more in like a peak performance mode of like thriving, right? And just serving and even helping others most, right? If we're in a better managed state. So that I just like it's
Agree.
such a great story of that, it sounds like, I feel like because of the work you've been doing with your self-care and your spirituality, that you're, you found yourself able to handle that with grace and really in leadership that was important, not only for you and your experience, but for all the people who were, relying on you. And wow.
And sometimes when you come into that acknowledgement that yes, yeah, like in that circumstance, my mindset was okay. Yes, we're gonna help our clients, because what had happened is, we had one group of 6 persons who's stranded on an island. We have
Yeah.
one group of 65 persons who got stranded, supposed to
Jeez.
leave. And you're talking about a corporate incentive group. So this is like, this is not like a family thing. This is like absolute complete individuals that come from different places. So, and they were being hosted by by our client, who's like a big entity as well. So it's like, when you feel this responsibility on your
Yes.
head, or when you
Mm.
claim and embrace it and say that, okay, we're gonna find the
Mhm.
solutions together. I think
Mm.
the solutions just come out, like
Mhm.
it's like the carpet just unrolls in front of you, or like the solutions are
Mm.
voluntarily like handed to
Mm.
you. And I think that's a powerful thought to be had by all of us, knowing that we have access to it, that genuinely we really have access to it.
Yes.
And if we allow ourselves to transform the the fear that we have inside, and it's okay to have the fear. First and foremost, it's okay to
Mm.
have the fear and to be comfortable with it, to sit with it,
Mm.
and then say and decide that, okay, I'm going to move forward with it. I think that's a life changing thing for all of us. And I
Yeah.
wanted to share that story like with you. I mean, I didn't intend to do it, but I mean, it felt right. But anyways, I was gonna tell you about it anyways. But
I think
yeah,
it's so telling though, and it really reminds us that all of this personal work isn't just about our personal experience and just having more fun and feeling better, which is great too. But it's
correct.
about also being able to just yeah, handle hard stuff with more ease and be more of a leader with others as needed, and just, yeah, ready to thrive like that because we honed our approach, right? And just bringing in these levels of understanding. So I feel like, yeah, it's so exciting to think about just developing such this different relationship with this thing called fear. And then, yeah, how much what we're doing with our personal work can help. Right. uh,
And I've come to this realization also that e- and we've talked about this before, how everything in life is actually really connected, that what we do unto ourselves is actually what we are doing unto like our community and our world. And the
mm,
more good, or like just being more in life, being more in life also brings back more into our experience, whatever that more means, you know
mm.
to each and everyone. So it's a good thing to reflect, like to reflect
Yes,
on,
yes.
like it's like the seeds that you've planted in the past, now they're starting to show, now they're starting to grow. And that's where I really like understood, and that's where I really had that understanding of, okay, all of this work that I've been doing over the last 3 years, like more consistently and more intentionally and more consciously, has prepared me for this moment,
Yes.
has prepared me to be able to face this moment. It's like,
Mm,
the the mental, I don't know, mental stamina, or like, it just felt so wide inside. Wide in the sense that, it didn't feel
mm,
like, how fear feels like constricted, you feel small.
mm.
It's like, yes, it's kind of scary, but let's do it. I don't know if
Yes.
what are the right words to use, but kind of felt like that.
Yeah. Well, and I think what you're bringing up is important too. Like, part of the reason it's important to let ourselves also to feel the fear is because it is part of our experience. And if we're not, then we're kind of closing ourselves off to a whole level of experience, right? Just, and even just all around, with ourselves. And maybe sometimes that could feel safer. But I think, yeah, energetically, it starts to like be this constricted, not good feeling thing. And oh, I love how you keep talking about planting seeds. And I think that's a great way to think about it, like, and to think about each day, are we planting seeds, what sorts of seeds are we planting in our minds, in our consciousness, in our awareness, in our focus, and yes, yeah, right. And then is it more seeds toward fear or towards faith, right? I feel like those are just two sides of the two sides of the coin, right? Because it feels like it could be fear and love, but I don't know, fear and faith for me feels even more powerful as like the flip, and the most empowering space to be in.
But and if you think about it also, like, I think now those two words can actually be used interchangeably. Faith and love can be used interchangeably, because with great love there is great faith, and then with great faith there's also great love. Great love
Mm,
for the moment, great love for the circumstance, great love for
mm,
the whateverness of what is to come, even though it is
mm,
unknown. Like, I mean, I think a lot of teachers like us, a lot of um spiritual practitioners like us, we deal with a lot of the unknowns. And um the unknown is both exciting and also sometimes also a bit scary. And I think it's about building that power of, transforming whatever is the fear of the unknown into love of the unknown, faith in the
mm,
unknown, or something like that. Because sometimes, we don't always know like the specifics of the details. And sometimes there's also some fun in seeing the path unfold, you know, in front of us, in the way that it's meant to play out for us, or in the way that it's meant to be experienced in our life, or based on the lessons that we need we need to have.
Yes, I'm so glad you're bringing this up because I was just going to ask you about like this whole thing with like the unknown and the uncertainty. And I love how you're bringing up that we could start to see that as like a fun aspect. And I was just listening to Florence Scovel Shin this morning, and she was talking about faith as expectancy and like to look at what are you expecting, and that really shows you because yeah, I feel like it's interesting to be in this understanding that we have a creative power, right? And that we do create our own reality, that whole thing. Like, I feel like I do intellectually believe that. But then it's also interesting to be open to the uncertainty and maybe like the co-creation with the universe or
Yeah.
whatever, however we see that, and making like peace with that and not being scared in that, right? Or in a struggle with how much control we have with what's going to unfold, right? Because, and then I find it's ironic though to be scared when things feel uncertain, because really all things are always uncertain in a sense that we're always getting surprised, right? And things always unfold in ways that surprise us, and even when we think we know what's going to happen next month or next week or next year, we're often wrong, right? So it's funny that it's so scary, even though it's the total reality of life, right?
Yeah, we really absolutely do not know what's gonna happen to us even in the
Right.
next
And
minute, in the
yeah,
next
how did that
moment.
become so scary when it's like that's the eternal truth? We've been convinced we should know. And when we don't know, we're like, oh my gosh, but then we really never do know. So why is it so scary? Yeah, what do you think about some of that?
No, but I guess if you think about it, it's also a matter of like the perspective. That's why I think our practices are also so important. Our practice is so valuable because it helps to bring us that, that level of some kind of clarity, at least in to shine light
Yeah,
into this moment. and
right.
and if
Mm.
that clarity can expand into something, into this week, into this month, and that's how we build that vision.
Ooh.
But it all starts, I guess, with our practice. And um though it's been hectic the last 3 weeks, as I told you, but even when I could not, like, do the practices that I prefer to have, because I have had to prioritize more real world,
Right.
real adulting
Yeah.
stuff. But just having that conscious intention that that it's not intentional that I don't want to, but intuitively I feel that I need to attend to this. But on the other hand, also knowing in my mind that what I'm doing right now, this is already my practice.
Mm.
That being also in the state of in this realness, I'm also practicing my practice, but just in a different way.
Yes, I think that's so true, right? That's what it's ultimately
Yeah.
supposed to become about. And I love how you say shining a light into this moment or unto this moment. Oh my gosh. Yeah, go on.
And I have I'm in one community of teachers here in the Philippines, and one of the things that we always talk about is yoga on and off the mat, because yoga is a eternal union of mind, body, and spirit, and it isn't just the asanas, isn't it isn't just the mat work, but the yoga on and off the mat. I strongly believe in you know um its importance in us living the lives that we do want to have, and us enjoying this experience. That yoga and on and off the mat, that's where that real practice of yoga comes into play.
Mm,
That's where your real spirituality shows.
absolutely. I'm so glad you bring this up. And we're going to have to collaborate on this because this has been coming up so strongly for me, even just the last few days. Because I think, sometimes I've wondered if I want to try to use the word yoga because I feel
Mm.
like it's become such a misunderstood word.
Correct.
And yet at other times I'm like, no, it really is like, you're exactly that's a big great way to say it, yoga on and off the mat.
Yeah.
And that it's the life, it's this like mind, body, spirit lifestyle, right? That is supposed to be about how we're being in the moment, how we're managing our being, and all about the union and spiritual connection. And that, so it's like I'm coming back to like, okay, we need to like help the world see that this is yoga, right? Like yoga is, deserves the credit for all of that.
Correct.
So I absolutely agree. And that's a beautiful thing to bring in too. Like, so our approach with fear is, and that's, I think it's fun to think about how our practices with yoga and our yoga approach can help with fear, right?
Mm.
And that's really what can help, is just all these, just being aware of our attention and our focus and our mindset and the physiology of it all, right? And how our practices can help us manage that, right? And help us be more mindful about how we're focusing and feeling and transmuting with our practices, right? And how it is all about the perspectives, right? And our psychology. So yeah, I'm so stoked that we can be the help keeping bringing through what the true yoga message is, right?
And
Yoga is union.
like what you're talking about just now, that there's actually so many, like, so many topics, so many discussions, so many interesting things that can be, unrolled, unpacked, on each of these things. And like, I feel like the last like 3 to 5 years, the amount of understanding that I've gained and um come to realize, it's been wonderful and immense. And I think, we've had this conversation also many times, that motherhood was also a very big
Mm,
part, to tie it in, and
mm,
like every time, you have a pregnancy, or as a mom, there's always these tight, I mean, to tie it back to feeling, there's always these little fears that are there, even in this little moment to moment. But like, you know how do you reassure yourselves, how do you help yourself to keep
wow.
on looking for like the better? Because oftentimes, I'm sure maybe when we were growing up, our parents would say, no, don't do this, don't climb up there, don't do that. It's like there's all these no, no, no,
Oh
no,
my
no,
gosh.
no. And it could be coming from that place of fear. And that's why we also tell our children, okay, please be careful, don't put your finger in the socket, or like, okay, don't jump from the high stairs. It's all coming from it does come from a state of fear. But then, you know like, uh now, like, we've been talking about this. We were doing Montessori, but for the last 2 3 years, because of the pandemic, it's been a homeschool Montessori. So it's been more real, really, for me to understand, that in the practice of Montessori, of independence of the child, and seeing the child develop, how do you communicate? You don't always get
Mm,
it perfect, but you can at least
mm.
try your best, do what you can. And the try your best is the best that you can do, then that's good enough. But you don't have to beat yourself up for not
Gosh,
being the
yes,
perfect mom,
right.
not
And
not being the
yeah.
perfect person.
Uh, oh my gosh, I love that you're bringing this up, because I had not even considered this till now, and it's definitely been especially true for me as a mom. I think you're so right that from the time that they're born, now we have this new thing that's kind of triggering fears, and now this new reason to face fear. And interesting how we're teaching them about fear in the way that we respond to them, right? And try to manipulate them or not. And I'm gonna say too that I think it happens just as much. Like my kids are now 18 and 21, and just as much as ever, I'm having to deal with my fears for them or about
Correct.
them, right? And how am I going to manage that? How much do I express that? Is that going to help them? Is it going to hurt them? Um, but
Same.
we can see it as a beautiful invitation, right, to face our fears. And then I'm remembering that one of my favorite people who taught me about like education and raising kids, my friend Tracy Roberts, she helped us see that risk is such a part of learning, like it's really clear when the little ones, when they're doing things that feel like scary to us, but sometimes it's not anything that's actually that dangerous, right? And it is, and then it really helps us see that risk is such a part of learning. So even more so, we want to, for ourselves and others, um, yeah, look at how we're responding to our fear. And I love that you bring up how motherhood, parenthood, oh my gosh, because they're like a part of us. So we get triggered in the way we might for ourselves, or maybe even more so. And then we
Correct.
have this feeling of responsibility, right? To like, how are we gonna like make sure our kids are safe,
Correct. I mean,
and but
at the
then
base
how do we not
level,
raise them so to be fear based? Oh man, that's a great big topic and important.
and how do you say, we are, yes, we are, I mean, in the humility of it, yes, we are but human, but we're trying to be good humans for our children, to try to give them um a happy life
Mm.
experience that they can learn from. Whatever, whoever we are is because of whatever we've gone through, and it is what it is. No regrets to that, because we wouldn't have
Mm.
realized what we realize now if we hadn't gone through what we had gone through.
Mm. Yeah, right. And that's where it's so beautiful to have practices that help us, or even people in our lives that help us like reflect and
Yeah.
do that, have those moments of understanding and realization so that we can be like, oh, yeah, okay, that did all, serve a purpose or make sense. Or, oh, wow. But I think you're helping me see how powerful would that be as parents if we were just making it a practice to look more at what are we afraid of for our kids, kind of like we do with ourselves in our creative projects, and just keep weeding through what makes sense. How do I want to respond to this? Is this worth voicing, or is this one that I want to, am I harming them with that? Right? Because when we're holding a vision for someone, like I love how like Neville Goddard will talk so much about imagination, it's like our God within, and how he'll talk about when we hold someone else in a vision, like when we're picturing something for someone else, we can totally hold them in like their highest vision and like use that power for them to, help them be more likely to be in that vision, right? Or as, and we could do this as parents a lot too, where we're thinking about the worst, but here
Mhm.
now we are like cursing them with that vision, and picturing them failing and picturing them getting hurt. And that's just kind of like that biology of parenting where you think somehow it's helpful to be aware of the worst thing, but it's like, well,
Correct.
but if you're picturing that for your loved ones, you're like cursing them with that vision, right? So I think that's where it's like, it like haunts us. um, and what do you think about this idea that, I mean, do you think that there's like a dark and a light and a good and an evil and any of that true in what's happening for us as humans within us or around us? Or do you think that's just like an unevolved understanding of it all? And that's kind of a big question too, but
You mean for
yeah,
you mean in the context of fear?
yeah, or just, yeah. And even just
No.
this idea of there being like maybe like a shadow or even like a devil side of ourselves or life, that might be kind of trying to get us in a sense if we're not aware, like the Christians, I think, call it like the enemy, and I certainly don't believe like that there's a man in a red suit or anything like that. But,
Yes.
sometimes I'm curious about, is it possible that there is that we just within ourselves or within the universe that we
Okay.
want to just be aware of and kind of leaning towards the light? Or I don't know, do you think that that's just fear-based thinking about
No, I mean, I was
what's
just
true?
kind of trying to process it in my head right now, but you know, again, because we and everything is energy, I think that the more you can say that, like the more sinister side of fear, meaning to say
Yes.
the fear that doesn't come from within us, but the fear that comes externally to us, or that's triggered
Ooh.
externally through us,
Ah.
is really brought about through people who have great fear that is unchecked, unprocessed, unsupported. So I think we've been talking about this whole love, faith, community cycle, on and on and on. We've been going through these different themes in this conversation, and the answer to to the fear is also the same thing. When we look at life with compassion, it softens even others. It softens
Ooh,
even the
that's
hard.
such like a great one liner right there. When we look at life with compassion, it softens
Yeah,
others.
yeah. I mean, um,
Mm,
in its most honest sense, because someone who would do something sinister would be coming from a place of, you know absolute fear or horror,
mm,
to even imagine, to think that, this is the only way that I can do it. This horrific way is the only way that I can do it, because that's like in his emotional scale, that is the only thing he can access.
yeah.
But when you apply, the compassion and the kindness into that situation, you never know how the heart of the person can change.
Yes.
Because,
Mhm.
at the end of everything, there's only release. Whether
Mm.
it's the bottom of the scale or at the top of the scale, it's all release.
Ah.
Like
Uh-huh.
the just the general concept of energy as it is,
Ah. Yes.
right? Just the vibrating ball of energy. Because when you get to the bottom, which is basically fear, I mean, people will always think that, what feels worse than fear? Death. But is it really death?
Yeah.
Because this is a transmutation of energy. But, fear is the most bottom, but it just depends on, like, how big or how massive that fear feels like, or how soft that fear feels like. Soft enough to get you access one nudge above into, like, maybe like anger, or like disgust, or like, you know that's why I feel like, we study Abraham. That's why I feel that the emotional scale is also very powerful. This topic that you're talking about, it is revolutionary. It's an important conversation to have, because a lot of people get stuck all their lives in this place of fear, that they live their entire life out of that fear. But honestly, there's so many things to access if we allow ourselves to transmute it. You
Mm.
may not ever, you may not ever get to joy on specific topics, but you could at least,
Mm.
outside of fear, right? You could at least bring it into something like, boredom, or like normal, and then maybe when the energy takes up, then take it up all the way to joy.
Mm. I love that. I feel like you and I are people who are like all about the transmutation. And then I feel like it's exciting to be addressing it as energy. And I know like you're trained in Reiki as well, right? And just this understanding of it all as energy. And that, like, as you were explaining, that eventually it's all going to be about a release,
Yeah.
a form of release. And then I think you brought up something really powerful too, that a lot of our fears are coming from outside of us, or like are probably things that we've learned, right, from
Yeah.
and from other people who were not conscious too, like that was bred from a lack of consciousness and like this kind of sinister thing
Yes.
that
And
that we call, and that, yeah, and that it is so beautiful to think that just applying like kindness and compassion is an immediate way to like transmute our
like,
understanding even.
like I was also coming from the perspective of, like, um when we feel unsafe in certain places, in certain situations, we have this instinct to tells us always to get yourselves out of there. But when we don't
Mm-hmm.
listen, or when we're not in tune to that
Mm.
internal compass, sometimes that's what gets us into um these kinds of situations. And, as they say, the vibration or the energy always attracts. I
Right.
mean, I don't know if it's the right. No, no. Maybe we'll talk about it on another time. But, when things happen to people, there's an attraction of an energy at that point that brought it to be such.
Yeah.
whatever happened to the person, or whoever was doing it to them, in whichever part of the scale, emotional scale it is.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I mean, so our understanding of energy, I think, more than ever has to grow, so that we always plant those seeds in our seeds, like the way we live our life, so that we always plant seeds that bring us to the direction that we do want to take, so that we have the
Mm-hmm.
guidance and the alignment and access to that um, strength coming from, eternal energy, or a higher
Mm.
source of energy for us.
Yeah. Yeah. And like I feel like what you're talking about is just bringing it like general, like we're talking about just more conscious living, right? And more mindful living, which includes dealing with ourselves, mind, body, spirit, and shining a light unto this moment. Like you said,
Yeah.
so many good
So,
one liners in here. I love it. So good. But oh my gosh, yeah, I noticed we had no problem filling up an hour. So thank you so much for staying up late to talk. And yeah, well, let's talk soon about how soon we'll do this again. I'm ready. But before we would close, is there anything that you would want to say that you didn't get to say along the lines of fear? And then I would love to give you a chance to share how people can follow you, just to keep hearing from you and being aware of what you're up to.
okay. So, no, I guess maybe to just kind of, tie it all together. Um, I've come to this realization that um, fear is not necessarily a bad thing. Sometimes fear is just a way for us to be reminded of the question, to be reminded of the question, what is it that I need to know in this moment?
Mm.
So
Mm.
it's like it opens us into this whole discussion with ourselves. Like, okay, what am I supposed to know in this moment? Why am I feeling this way? Maybe this is a way for you to reflect that, okay, did I forget something? Was I supposed to do something? Am I supposed to be responding to something? So
Yes. Ooh.
it's not necessarily meant to scare you, like in the I mean, perfect for Halloween, it's like
Right,
not in this
exactly.
ghoulish way, like, ooh. It's not really like that, but it's really meant to be a reminder. And we accept it as a reminder and say, I mean, at least accept it in a I mean, in the psychology of it. Think of it in that way, rather than, bringing it down into something that, oh my God. Then you put it into the body, then becomes anxiousness, and then you feel it, and it becomes painful. No, but then you just
Mm.
keep it in that sense that, okay, what do I need to know?
What
Just
do
to
I need
remind
to know?
yourselves. Then
Yes.
what do I need to know?
Ooh.
What do I need to understand? Why am I feeling this way? So
Ah.
something like that. And allow ourselves to use that fear as a channel into something, created into something that is uplifting to our
Ooh.
experience, or into the
Mm.
experience of our life in our community.
Mm. Wow, that's a beautiful way to phrase that. But I think that's such a specific, awesome idea there, to use that like a tool, like when we're feeling and aware of fear, which again, I feel like this could be a daily practice for someone like me, for a lot of us, to just looking at what am I currently feeling some fears about, right? Just kind of know where it could be continuing to weed. There's probably something, right? And then to be like asking, what is it here to, what do I need to know
What
here?
do I need to
What
know?
is
Yeah.
this? Why is this here? And just getting more like curious about it,
Yeah,
and bringing in that kindness and compassion too, like came
absolutely.
along here. And yeah, so woo, I love what came through here. So
Oh, I
like
know.
unique and
And
helpful for me. Like I'm always like transformed by these conversations. So it's like this is gonna have me thinking now, and and growing my understanding. So I so appreciate it.
and
So good.
what you're doing, LJ, it's really a gift. And thank you for providing this, this channel and this platform to have, these kinds of interesting conversations. I feel that they don't get talked about enough. And you always, hit it right on the nail. That, you talk about these things that, other people haven't thought about talking about, or not are afraid to talk about. You know what
Right?
I
Yeah.
mean?
Well, yeah. I mean, it certainly can feel like I know I'm, yeah, kind of being wild, and I'm like, let's try to talk about fear in 30 minutes or so. It's like, and so I appreciate that. Yeah, people like you are up for the adventure. And yeah, it's fun. I love to think it could be enriching for whoever might come upon it in any ways, right? Just that's the hope. But either way, you and I were enriched. And
Correct. Correct.
but yeah, so but for people who are here, who could have been here live or catch it as a recording, will you share some good ways for people to follow you?
Oh
People
yeah.
and anything
Okay.
you want them to know about that you're up to?
So so my main socials at the moment are my Instagram, which is at Sheena Shroff. That's SHEENASHROFF. And so you'll see my other socials related to that social,
Mm-hmm.
related to like my what do you call this? My corporate life, my family
Yes.
life, my energy work. Um, so it's a whole lot of things. So you can say that I have many different interests, and um, yeah, just you can find me on Instagram and also on Facebook. But I think the easiest is through Instagram, and yeah, you can find me there. And I love having these conversations with LJ, and I hope no, I actually erase that. It's not hope. I know we're gonna have more. It's just
Yes.
it's gonna unfold at our time.
Yes, yes. Right. Well, yeah. Well, I'll reach out because I'd love to like plan something consistently. So, but thank you so much, girl. And yeah, good luck as you keep handling the typhoon situation. I hope because people are
But I
still
have good news.
stranded.
I have good news. I have good news. Four of the groups were able to depart today, so that's about 54 plus 25 plus 65 plus 2 have already departed.
Uh,
And then in the next several days, we have several more. So, I mean, I mean, whatever you say, the universe has been so kind to us, to have provided us, the help and the support of many people. That
mm,
have It's like a great big, machine that's been working 24 hours across like the entire country, or across the entire world,
mm.
helping each other. When
Oh,
we come to that understanding that people are really out there to just help us and support us,
mm,
life
right.
changes.
That's yeah, even just higher consciousness understanding right there. So thank you so much, girl. And I love you and
I love
have a
you
good
so
night.
much.
Get some good sleep with the kiddos.
I will.
Thanks
Thank you
for
so much,
staying
my
up to
love.
talk. I appreciate
My
it.
pleasure. Always,
Okay,
always,
talk to you
always.
soon. And thank you all for being here. Cheers and